Be happy, respect happiness, and help people to understand that happiness is the goal of life. Whenever you see a blissful person, respect him, he is holy. And wherever you feel a gathering that is blissful, festive, think of it as a sacred place. We have to learn a totally new language. Only then can this old, rotten humanity be changed. We have to learn the language of health, wholeness, happiness. It is going to be difficult because our investments are great. It is one of the most fundamental questions that a person can ask. It is also strange because it should be easy to drop suffering, anguish, misery. It should not be difficult. You don't want to be miserable. So there must be some deep complication behind it. The complication is that from your very childhood you have not been allowed to be happy, to be blissful, to be joyous. You have been forced to be serious, and seriousness implies sadness. You were forced to do things that you never wanted to do. You were helpless, weak, dependent on people. Naturally, you had to do what they were saying. You did those things unwillingly, miserably, in deep resistance. Against yourself, you have been forced to do so much that by and by one thing became clear to you, that anything that is against you is right, and anything that is not against you is bound to be wrong. And constantly, this whole upbringing filled you with sadness, which is not natural. To be joyous is natural, just as to be healthy is natural. When you are healthy, you don't go to the doctor to inquire, "Why am I healthy?" There is no need for any question about your health. But when you are sick, you immediately ask, "Why am I sick? What is the reason, the cause of my disease?" It is perfectly all right to ask why you are miserable. It is not right to ask why you are blissful. You have been brought up in an insane society where to be blissful without reason is thought to be madness. If you are simply smiling for no reason at all, people will think something is loose in your head. Why are you smiling? Why are you looking so happy? And if you say, "I don't know, I'm just being happy," your answer will only strengthen their idea that something has gone wrong with you. But if you are miserable, nobody will ask why you are miserable. To be miserable is natural. Everybody is. It is nothing special to you. You are not doing something unique. Unconsciously, this idea goes on settling in you, that misery is natural and blissfulness is unnatural. Blissfulness has to be proved. Misery needs no proof. Slowly it sinks deeper into you, into your blood, into your bones, into your marrow, although naturally it is against you. So you have been forced to be a schizophrenic. Something that is against your nature has been forced on you. You have been distracted from yourself into something which you are not. This creates the whole misery of humanity, that everybody is where he should not be, what he should not be, and because he cannot be where he needs to be, where it is his birthright to be, he is miserable. And you have been in this state of going away from yourself farther and farther. You have forgotten the way back home. So wherever you are, you think this is your home. Misery has become your home. Anguish has become your nature. Suffering has been accepted as health, not as sickness. And when somebody says, "Drop this miserable life, drop this suffering that you are carrying unnecessarily," a very significant question arises. This is all that we have got. If we drop it, we will be no one. We will lose our identity. At least right now I am somebody miserable, somebody sad, somebody in suffering. If I drop all this, then the question will be, what is my identity? Who am I? I don't know the way back home, and you have taken away the hypocrisy, the false home that was created by the society. Nobody wants to stand naked in the street. It is better to be miserable. At least you have something to wear, although it is misery, but there is no harm. Everybody else is wearing the same kind of clothes. For those who can afford it, their miseries are costly. Those who cannot afford it are doubly miserable. They have to live in a poor kind of misery. Nothing much to brag about. So there are rich, miserable people and poor, miserable people. And the poor, miserable people are trying their hardest to attain somehow the status of rich, miserable people. These are the only two types available. The third type has been completely forgotten. The third is your reality, and it has no misery in it. You are asking me why man cannot drop his misery. It is for the simple reason that that's all he has got. You want to make him even more poor. He is already poor. There are rich, miserable people. He has a small, tiny misery. He cannot brag about it. And you are telling him to drop even this. Then he will be nobody. Then he will be empty, a nothingness. And all the cultures, all the societies, all the religions have committed a crime against humanity. They have created a fear of nothingness, of emptiness. The truth is that nothingness is the door to riches. Nothingness is the door to blissfulness, and the door has to be nothing. The wall is there. You cannot enter a wall. You will simply hit your head, may have some broken ribs. Why can you not enter the wall? Because the wall has no emptiness. It is solid, it objects. That's why we call things objects. They are objective. They don't allow you to pass through them, they prevent you. A door has to be non-objective, it has to be emptiness. A door means there is nothing to prevent you. You can go in, and because we have been conditioned that emptiness is something bad, nothingness is something bad, we are being prevented by the conditioning from dropping the misery, dropping the anguish, dropping all the suffering and just being nothing. The moment you are nothing, you become a door to the divine, a door to yourself, a door that leads to your home, a door that connects you back to your intrinsic nature. And man's intrinsic nature is blissful. Blissfulness is not something to be achieved. It is already there. We are born with it. We have not lost it. We have simply gone farther away, keeping our backs to ourselves. It is just behind us, a small turn and a great revolution. And it is not a theoretical question with me. I have just accepted nothingness as a door, which I call meditation, which is nothing but another name for nothingness. And the moment nothingness happens, suddenly you are standing face to face with yourself, and all misery disappears. The first thing you do is simply to laugh at yourself, at what an idiot you have been. That misery was never there. You were creating it with one hand, and you were trying to destroy it with another hand. And naturally you were in a split, in a schizophrenic condition. It is absolutely easy, simple. The most simple thing in existence is to be oneself. It needs no effort. You are already it. Just a remembrance, just getting out of all the stupid ideas that the society has imposed on. And that is as simple as a snake slipping out of its old skin and never even looking back. It is just an old skin. If you understand it, it can happen this very moment. Because this very moment you can see there is no misery, no anguish. You are silent, standing on the door of nothing. Just a step more inward and you have found the greatest treasure that has been waiting for you for thousands of lives. The ego subsists on misery. The more misery, the more nourishment for it. In blissful moments, the ego totally disappears, and vice versa. If the ego disappears, bliss starts showering on you. If you want the ego, you cannot forgive, you cannot forget, particularly the hurts, the wounds, the insults, the humiliations, the nightmares. Not only that, you cannot forget, you will go on exaggerating them, you will emphasize them. You will tend to forget all that has been beautiful in your life. You will not remember joyous moments. They serve no purpose as far as the ego is concerned. Joy is like poison to the ego, and misery is like vitamin. You will have to understand the whole mechanism of the ego. If you try to forgive, that is not real forgiveness. With effort, you will only repress. You can forgive only when you understand the stupidity of the game that goes on within your mind. The total absurdity of it all has to be seen through and through, otherwise you will repress from one side and it will start coming from another side. You will repress in one form, it will assert in another form, sometimes so subtle that it is almost impossible to recognize it, that it is the same old structure, so renovated, refurnished, redecorated, that it looks almost new. The ego lives on the negative because the ego is basically a negative phenomenon. It exists on saying no. No is the soul of the ego. And how can you say no to bliss? You can say no to misery. You can say no to the agony of life. How can you say no to the flowers and the stars and the sunsets and all that is beautiful, divine? And the whole of existence is full of it. It is full of roses, but you go on picking the thorns. You have a great investment in those thorns. On the one hand, you go on saying, no, I don't want this misery, and on the other hand, you go on clinging to it. And for centuries you have been told to forgive, but the ego can live through forgiving. It can start having a new nourishment through the idea that I have forgiven. I have even forgiven my enemies. I am no ordinary person. And remember perfectly well, one of the fundamentals of life is that the ordinary person is one who thinks that he is not. The average person is one who thinks that he is not. The moment you accept your ordinariness, you become extraordinary. The moment you accept your ignorance, the first ray of light has entered in your being. The first flower has bloomed. The spring is not far away. Jesus says, Forgive your enemies, love your enemies. And he is right, because if you can forgive your enemies, you will be free of them. Otherwise, they will go on haunting you. Enmity is a kind of relationship. It goes deeper than your so-called love. Someone asked the question earlier today, why does a harmonious love affair seem to be dull and dying? For the simple reason that it is harmonious. It loses all attraction for the ego. It seems as if it is not. If it is absolutely harmonious, you will completely forget about it. Some conflict is needed, some struggle is needed, some violence is needed, some hatred is needed. Love, your so-called love, does not go very deep. It is only skin deep, or maybe not even so deep. But your hate goes very deep. It goes as deep as your ego. Jesus is right when he says forgive, but he has been misunderstood for centuries. Buddha says the same thing. All the awakened ones are bound to say the same thing. Their languages can differ. Naturally, different ages, different times, different people. They have to speak different languages, but the essential core cannot be different. If you cannot forgive, that means you will live with your enemies, with your hurts, with your pains. So on the one hand, you want to forget and forgive, because the only way to forget is to forgive. If you do not forgive, you cannot forget. But on the other hand, there is a deeper involvement. Unless you see that involvement, Jesus or Buddha is not going to help. Their beautiful statements will be remembered by you, but they will not become part of your lifestyle. They will not circulate in your blood, in your bones, in your marrow. They will not be part of your spiritual climate. They will remain alien, something imposed from the outside. They are beautiful, intellectually appealing, but existentially, you will go on living the same old way.